The text was not meant for him. That much needed to be said up front, because nothing about what happened next would make any sense without first understanding that Zara Osei was not a reckless woman. She was the kind of woman who tracked her invoices in a color-coded spreadsheet, kept a portable charger in every bag she owned, and had not done a single impulsive thing since the summer she was 19 and decided on a whim to take the A train to the end of the line just to see where it went. That had also not ended well. But this was different. This was Marcus. She had come home early from a venue walkthrough in Dumbo, still in her work blazer with a clipboard tucked under one arm, and she had let herself into the apartment she paid $1,100 a month for in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and she had found her boyfriend of 2 years sitting on her couch with his shirt on inside out and a look on his face like a man calculating the fastest route to an exit. She didn't need to hear a word. The perfume hanging in the air, something floral and expensive that was definitely not hers, told her the entire story in under 3 seconds. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the clipboard. She didn't do any of the things that her body was vibrating with the urge to do. She simply picked her keys back up off the kitchen counter, where she had just set them down, turned around, and walked back out the door and down the 4 flights of stairs and out onto the Brooklyn sidewalk, where the October air hit her like a slap. She made it half a block before her hands started shaking. She called Bianca. "Tell me everything," Bianca said, before Zara had gotten 3 words out. She lived 2 doors down the hall and worked in marketing and had, on at least 4 separate occasions over the past year, tried to tell Zara that something was off about Marcus. Zara had not listened on any of those occasions. She was listening now. By the time she finished explaining, Bianca had already escalated from alarmed to personally offended on her behalf. "In your apartment," Bianca said, "the words came out like a verdict that you pay for. In Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where the rent is not cheap, while you were at work." Bianca, "No, I'm coming downstairs. I'm not upstairs. I'm outside." "Then stay there. I'm putting on shoes." "Don't put on shoes. I need a minute. I need to do something with this." Zara stopped walking and leaned against the brick wall of her building, under the busted street light on her corner that the landlord had been promising to fix since February. Above her it buzzed and flickered weakly, like it too was having a rough night. "I need to say it somewhere. Say it to me. I need to send it. I need him to read it." A pause. "Zara, don't do anything." But she had already pulled the phone away from her ear and opened her messages. She found Marcus's name in the thread, 2 years of texts, all the way back to the first stupid meme he'd sent her, all the good morning messages, and the running late "don't wait UPS," and the 900 tiny ordinary moments that added up to a life she had apparently been building on a fault line, and she stared at it for exactly 4 seconds. Then she opened a new message window instead. She was going to type his number in from memory. She had typed it 100 times. She knew it, but her hands were shaking and the streetlight was buzzing, and she was the angriest she had been in her entire adult life, and she hit one wrong digit somewhere in the middle and didn't notice, and she typed, "Screw you. I came home early and you couldn't even bother to lock the front door? 2 years. 2 years. And this is what I get? I hope whatever you're chasing is worth it, because you just lost the only person who ever actually showed up for you. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't you dare knock on my door. We are done." She hit send. For exactly 3 seconds she felt better. Then she felt hollow. Then her phone buzzed. She lifted it. A reply. Already. From a number she didn't recognize. Her stomach dropped before her brain caught up. She looked at the thread. Looked at the number at the top. Looked at it again. That was not Marcus's number. She opened the reply with a dry mouth. "Be careful." 2 words. No explanation. No "who is this" or "wrong number" or any of the normal human responses to receiving a furious text from a stranger. Just 2 words, clean and flat, like a warning etched into concrete. She put the phone back to her ear. "Bianca, I think I sent it to the wrong number." Silence. "What do you mean the wrong number?" "I mean I typed it wrong. I sent it to someone else." "What did they say back?" "Be careful." A scream. Full volume, no warning. "Zara." "I know." Text them back. Say, wrong number. Act normal. Move on. She opened the thread and typed, sorry, wrong number. 3 seconds. Then, I know. She read it twice. I know. Not no problem or happens to everyone, just I know, settled and certain and not at all surprised. Her thumbs moved. Then why did you reply? The response came fast. Because you should know, the person you meant to send that to is going to come looking for you tonight. You were angrier than you planned to be. Men like that notice when the script changes. The cold that moved through her had nothing to do with the October air. She switched back to Bianca. He said Marcus is going to come looking for me tonight. He, a beat. How does he know who you meant to text? I don't know. Google the number. Right now. She put Bianca on speaker, opened the browser, and typed in the number. The results loaded slowly in the glow of the busted streetlight, and then they loaded and there was nothing, no name, no registered carrier, no business listing. One single forum thread deep in the results mentioned the digits in a list of others, all tagged the same way. Unregistered. Burner. Do not contact. Her chest pulled tight. She went back to the message thread. She had not told this person her name. She had written I and me, and we are done, but not her name. Not once. She typed slowly, how do you know my name? The reply took almost a full minute, long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, I don't give out that information. She lowered the phone. The streetlight buzzed. Somewhere down the block a cab laid on its horn and the city moved on, indifferent as always, and Zara stood very still on the sidewalk outside her building in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, with the specific feeling of a woman who has just accidentally knocked on a door she cannot unlock. Bianca, she said. Her voice was steady. Lock your door tonight. Enjoyed the opening? Subscribe to Nico I's Stories for more addictive stories. New stories drop every day. Don't miss what comes next. She did not sleep. She lay in her bed with the chain lock thrown on the front door and the fire escape window latched for the first time since she moved in, and she stared at the water stain on her ceiling that she had always meant to report to the landlord, and she thought about 2 words on a screen and the minute of silence before the answer that wasn't really an answer. By 2 in the morning, she had mostly convinced herself it was nothing. Some anonymous number with a taste for being cryptic. A bored insomniac who thought it was funny to be ominous. New York was full of people like that. By 4 in the morning, she had unconvinced herself entirely. At 7, she gave up on sleep, made a pour-over with the last of her good coffee grounds, and opened her front door to water the small succulent she kept on the welcome mat outside, a tiny act of optimism she had maintained through 3 apartments and 1 particularly bad winter. The succulent was there. So was a black envelope. It was wedged neatly between the pot and the doorframe with a precision that felt considered, not thrown, not slid carelessly, but placed. No name on the front, no stamp. The flap was unsealed. Inside, a single red rose with the stem wrapped in a thin white ribbon, and beneath it, a small note card in handwriting that was clean and deliberate and unhurried, as if whoever had written it had all the time in the world. You should lock your fire escape window. Zara stood in her doorway in her socks and her oversized Howard University sweatshirt, holding a note card that told her someone had been close enough to her apartment to know that her fire escape window, 4th floor, rear-facing, the one she had unlatched 3 weeks ago to let in the last of the September air, was unlocked. She called the police. 2 officers from the local precinct came within the hour. They walked her apartment, checked the fire escape, looked at the envelope and the note card, and took photographs with the particular efficiency of people who have attended many calls like this one and found nothing unusual at any of them. They took her statement. They gave her a case number and told her to call back if anything escalated and to consider investing in a doorbell camera. She called Bianca the moment they left. Come stay with me, Bianca said immediately. She was already in the hallway. Zara could hear her apartment door opening through the phone, and then in real life simultaneously, which was the particular intimacy of best friends who lived 60 feet apart. I'm fine. You are not fine. Someone was at your fire escape. The police don't think. I do not care what the police think. I have watched enough true crime to know that this is chapter one of a very bad documentary, and I will not allow you to be the subject. Bianca appeared in Zara's open doorway in her pajamas, phone still pressed to her ear, staring at her. Come, down, the hall. I have the Harrington Gala tonight, Zara said. I've been building toward that contract for 4 months. I'm not canceling. Bianca's expression cycled through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. You are going to get yourself into serious trouble over an event planning job. It is a very important event planning job. Bianca said something under her breath and went back to her apartment to get dressed. The Harrington Charity Gala was held in the grand ballroom of a Midtown Manhattan hotel, the kind of venue with 20-foot ceilings and chandeliers that cost more per fixture than Zara's annual rent, the kind of event where the guest list was curated with the same care as a Supreme Court opinion. Mrs. Harrington was old New York money with newer New York opinions, and her annual benefit was the event of the fall season. Zara had been managing the logistics for 16 weeks. She arrived at 4 o'clock to oversee setup and lost herself in the steady, absorbing work of making 200 moving pieces behave. Floral arrangements, sound check, the caterer's timeline, seating adjustments for a last-minute RSVP from a senator's office. For 3 hours, she was just a woman who was very good at her job, and it was the best she had felt since yesterday evening on the sidewalk in Brooklyn. Guests arrived at 7. She moved through the room in her black earpiece and her deep emerald wrap dress, present everywhere and noticed by almost no one, which was exactly how she preferred it on event nights. She was standing near the east wall, reviewing the dessert timeline on her tablet, when the energy in the room shifted. It wasn't anything she could point to, not a sound or a disturbance, just a subtle reorganization, the way a room adjusts around a new gravitational center without being told to. She looked up from her tablet. He was near the entrance. Dark suit, no tie, the kind of stillness that read not as patience, but as absolute, unhurried control. The stillness of a man who had never in his life needed to fill silence to feel comfortable in it. The guests around him kept a few feet of space without appearing to, the way people unconsciously give room to something they cannot name, but instinctively register. Zara looked back at her tablet. 40 minutes later, she was adjusting a centerpiece that had listed slightly to the left when she became aware of a presence beside her and heard a voice, low and even. The white roses are better centered. The red ones are pulling the arrangement left. She looked up. He was closer than she expected. Dark eyes, sharp jaw, a faint scar running along the left side of it. He was looking at the flowers, not at her, with the detached assessment of a man evaluating a contract clause. The florist will hear about it, she said, the professional response arriving on autopilot. He looked at her then. A single, complete look. The kind that starts at the eyes and ends there too, that doesn't wander or perform. And she knew, not from his face, from the quality of his silence. The same weight, the same unhurried certainty she had felt reading 2 words on a phone screen on a Brooklyn sidewalk. Be careful. She knew it the way, you know, a voice you've only heard once in the dark, not because you can prove it, but because something in you has already cataloged it without being asked. You, she said. It came out very quietly. He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. He simply held her gaze. Dante, he said, not an introduction. A fact. The room continued around them, crystal and candlelight and 200 people eating and laughing and performing wealth at one another, and Zara gripped her tablet and thought very deliberately about the distance between herself and the nearest exit. He leaned in slightly, not aggressive, just close enough that the next 4 words were only for her. You really should stop texting strangers, Zara. He didn't try to speak to her again that night. He was simply there, present at the periphery of every room she moved through, visible whenever she looked up, never close enough to be a confrontation, and never far enough to be ignored. By the time the gala ended at 11 and she was overseeing the breakdown, she had made a decision. She was going to pretend that none of it had happened, return home, throw a second chain lock on her door, and find a new number to put on her business cards. That plan lasted until the following afternoon. At 1:47 p.m., while she was eating a sad desk lunch of leftover rice in her home office and trying to focus on a venue proposal for a February wedding, her phone buzzed with a message from the same number. You have 30 minutes. The Whitmore Club on 54th. Ask for the Caldwell reservation. She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her keys. The Whitmore Club was the kind of midtown institution that didn't have a sign on the door or a listing on Google Maps. It existed for people who already knew where it was. The host at the front, a slim man in a dark suit, who looked at her with polite neutrality, led her without comment through a corridor paneled in dark walnut and into a small private lounge at the back where the lighting was warm and the noise of Midtown Manhattan was so thoroughly blocked that it felt like another city entirely. Dante was already there. He sat in one of two leather chairs facing each other across a low table, and he stood when she entered, a reflex, automatic, the kind of courtesy that has been drilled in young and stayed. He waited until she sat before he did. No greeting. No pleasantries. He looked at her and said, Marcus Briggs owes the Romano family $420,000. Zara sat very still. He borrowed it 14 months ago, Dante continued. His voice was the same as his texts, measured, unhurried, with the specific quality of a man who has never needed to raise it to be heard. The terms were clear. He's missed the last 5 payments and stopped communicating in August. A pause. When men like Marcus run, they run toward the people closest to them. You were identified as the most likely point of contact 8 weeks ago. Your name has been in our files since then. I broke up with him 2 nights ago, Zara said. I don't know where he is. I don't have any way to reach him. And I didn't know any of this. I know. Then why am I here? He looked at her steadily. Because knowing doesn't automatically close the file. Your name is in those records regardless of what you knew. That association exists until someone decides to close it. The word someone hung in the air between them with an obvious weight. What do you want? She said. 2 things. The first, anything Marcus told you, properties, storage units, account information, anywhere he kept things he didn't want found. He didn't tell me anything like that. He used your laptop once. In June. You left it unlocked. Her jaw tightened. I don't know what he accessed. We'll handle that end. He picked up the glass of water on the table between them, turned it once between his palms, set it back down. The second thing is more involved. I have 2 social engagements over the next 2 weeks, the kind of event that requires a certain optics. A companion, someone who is natural in these rooms, who reads as genuine rather than hired. His eyes moved briefly across the lounge and came back to her. Someone with exactly the skill set you demonstrated last night. She looked at him. You want to take me to parties? I want your presence at 2 events to support the image of a legitimate businessman conducting legitimate social affairs. He said it without irony. In exchange, your name is removed from our files entirely. No association, no record, no liability. I'm not in any danger, she said. I didn't do anything. No, he agreed. But your name exists in a document that other people besides me have access to. People who are less interested in the distinction between knowing and not knowing. He let that settle for exactly 1 second. I'm offering to make it go away. She opened her mouth. No, she said. It was clean and final. She stood up. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down from habit and stopped. A bank notification. Her savings account. The number on the screen was wrong. It was deeply, sickeningly wrong. A balance that should have read just over $18,000, reading instead as $4,000 and change, and the most recent transaction was a wire transfer dated 3 months ago that she had never authorized and did not remember seeing. She had used Marcus's laptop in July to check a transfer when hers was at the repair shop. She had logged in and not logged out. The floor did not drop out from under her. That was how she knew how bad it was, because she had gone past the feeling of falling and arrived directly at the flat gray place on the other side of it. She looked up. Dante was watching her. He had not looked at her phone. He didn't need to. He ran a wire through my account, she said. Her voice came out very level. Dante said nothing. He used me. The words tasted like something burnt. The whole 2 years. I was just access. A backup account. A place to hide money. Most people in proximity to men, like Marcus, serve a purpose they aren't told about, Dante said. No satisfaction in it. No cruelty. Just the flat, weary statement of a man who has witnessed this particular pattern more times than he can count. Zara put her phone in her pocket, straightened her posture, looked at him with her chin level and her voice absolutely controlled. 2 events, she said. Then, my name is gone from every document, every file, every system you have. Completely. Completely, he said. I want that in writing before event 1. Something shifted briefly at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. You'll have it by tomorrow morning. She picked up her bag, turned toward the door. Smart girl, he said behind her. She didn't turn around. This, she thought as she walked back out through the walnut corridor and into the noise of Midtown, is the worst decision I have ever made. Loving the story so far? Share Nico Eyes stories with a friend who loves drama, romance, and a little danger. More stories are waiting for you on the channel. The written agreement arrived at 7:00 for the next morning, delivered by a man in a dark overcoat who knocked twice on Zara's door and handed her an envelope and left without a word. She read it twice, photographed every page, texted the photos to Bianca with a message. If anything happens to me, forward these to a lawyer, and received in response a voice memo that was mostly Bianca, making a sound that human language didn't have a word for. The agreement was real. The language was specific. Her name, removed from all Romano family records upon completion of 2 social appearances. Binding. Signed by someone whose last name she recognized from 3 separate New York Times business section headlines over the past 2 years. She filed it in a password-protected folder and got back to work. Event 1 was on a Thursday. Dante's car collected her at 7 from the corner of her block. A black car, unmarked, a driver who introduced himself only as Val and spent the ride to the Upper East Side in silence, so comfortable it felt professional. In the back seat, Dante handed her a single card with the host's name and 2 notes. Franklin Aldrich. Real estate. Doesn't like to be corrected. Anyone else I should know about? She asked. His wife collects paintings. His business partner is going through a divorce and will spend the evening pretending he isn't. The woman at the far left of the table is a federal judge. Don't mention the harbor development on the west side. She looked at him. You prepared briefing notes. I prepared information. For me. For the evening. She looked back out the window at the Upper East Side scrolling past. You've done this before. Not with someone who was going to do it better than me, he said, which was such an unexpectedly direct thing to say that she spent the rest of the ride trying to decide if it had been a compliment. The dinner was held in a landmarked 4-story townhouse off 5th Avenue that had belonged to the same family since 1887 and had the particular smell of old wood and serious money and rooms that had witnessed a great deal of important history and were entirely aware of it. 12 guests, 1 long table with candlelight and crystal and the specific kind of effortless elegance that costs an enormous amount of money to make look effortless. Franklin Aldrich sat at the head. Dante was seated to his right. Zara was placed directly across from Dante between a tech investor who wanted to talk about pickleball and the federal judge whose name was Honorable Claire Okafor, and who turned out to be the most interesting person Zara had spoken to in months. She hadn't planned to shine. She had planned to be pleasant and present and professionally warm, the way she was at every event, useful and invisible, the oil in the machinery. But Judge Okafor asked her a real question about her work, and she gave a real answer, and then Franklin Aldrich made a claim about the role of arts funding in urban development that was half wrong, and she corrected it so gently, with such evident pleasure in the subject, that he laughed and credited her with reminding him of a paper he'd read in 1994. She didn't notice the table leaning toward her until it already had. Across the candlelight, she caught Dante watching her. Not with the steady, cataloging assessment he turned on everyone else in the room. With something quieter, the expression of a man who has walked into a room expecting one thing and found another, and is recalculating in real time. She looked away first. After dinner, the guests moved toward the sitting room, but Dante caught her eye from across the foyer and tipped his chin toward the stairs. She followed him up one flight and through a door that opened onto a rooftop terrace where the October air came in cold and clean and the Manhattan skyline rose around them on every side, a full ring of lit windows and tower cranes and the particular dense blazing geometry of the city at night, which Zara had lived inside for 6 years and still sometimes stopped to look at like a stranger. She leaned against the railing. Below, somewhere, the city moved in its permanent restless current. Up here it was still. You didn't need me tonight, she said. You had that room. I had their attention, he said. He stood beside her, not looking at the skyline, looking at something she couldn't see. That's different from having them. She thought about that. And the difference matters to you. The difference is everything. She turned to study his profile, the sharp jaw, the faint scar, the way he held himself even now. Not relaxed exactly, but settled, as if tension was a tool he kept available rather than a state he lived in. Your brother, she said. He went very still. She had noticed it at the table. The way his expression shifted, brief and shuddered, when Judge Okafor mentioned a younger sibling in passing. Just a flicker. But she had been watching. You don't have to, she said. Luca. The name came out quiet, restrained in the way of something that has been held a long time. He was 20. I spent 4 years building what I thought was a wall around him, something that would keep him out of the parts of my world he didn't need to be in. He was quiet for a moment. I was building in the wrong direction. I was so focused on external threats that I didn't see what was already inside, what I had already let in by proximity. A pause. He didn't deserve any of it. She didn't say anything. She had learned that some truths, when a person finally releases them, need a moment of open air before anyone else touches them. I'm sorry, she said, finally, simple and real. He looked at her. Something in his face moved. Barely, like a shift in deep water that only shows at the surface as the slightest change in light. They were very close. She hadn't noticed them closing the distance, but they had, somewhere in the last few minutes, the way 2 people in a conversation will lean toward the truth without meaning to. His eyes were on hers, and she could feel the city blazing around them, and the space between them was a question that neither of them had said out loud. She didn't move. Neither did he. The terrace door opened. Felix stepped out. He was wearing the same expression he had been wearing every time Zara had looked in his direction, all evening. Not hostile, not warm, just the precise and permanent alertness of a man whose job was to notice things that other people missed. He looked at the 2 of them, registered the distance, registered Dante's face. A word, Felix said. Dante straightened. He glanced at her once, that same quiet, unreadable look, and followed Felix back through the door. Through the glass, Zara watched Felix speak, watched Dante listen with his arms crossed and his jaw set, watched Felix's eyes move once to the glass, to her, flat and pointed. She turned back to the skyline. Behind the glass, Dante heard every word Felix said. The logic was clean, the concern was legitimate, and he didn't disagree with any of it. He looked through the glass at the woman standing alone against the Manhattan skyline with the city burning behind her. He didn't walk away. The second event was a gallery opening. Dante's car came at 8. She wore something simpler this time, deliberately, consciously simpler, as though she could layer a little more distance between herself and whatever was building in the space between them that neither of them had named. Burnt orange wrap dress, flat strappy sandals, the small gold hoops she wore every day, the ones her mother had given her the Christmas she got her first real contract. When she got in the car, Dante looked at her and said nothing at all, which was somehow more affecting than anything he could have said. The gallery occupied the 3rd floor of a converted midtown loft building, raw ceilings, polished concrete floors, white walls hung with large format work by an artist whose name Zara had seen in 3 different magazine profiles this month. The kind of New York art event where the champagne was excellent, the conversation was about the art, but also about everything except the art, and the real business of the room was the quiet performance of being exactly the right kind of person in exactly the right kind of place. They moved through it together in an easy rhythm that had apparently developed without either of them deciding to. She pointed out a piece. He made one dry observation. She suppressed a laugh. He noticed. 3 separate people asked how long they had been together. For months, she said the first time. 5, Dante said, without looking at her. She pressed her lips together and moved to the next wall. They were 40 minutes in, standing before a large canvas that Zara had been genuinely looking at, a piece made entirely in gradients of gray that managed somehow to feel like something urgent. When Felix appeared at Dante's left shoulder, he said one word. She didn't hear it, but she felt the shift, not in anything visible. Dante's posture didn't change, his expression didn't change. His hand still rested at the small of her back, the way it had been for the last 10 minutes. But something in the quality of his stillness changed, the way still water changes when something moves beneath the surface. "Walk with me," he said to her. His voice was entirely normal. His hand was not. They moved toward the rear of the loft at a pace that read as casual to anyone watching. She matched him without asking questions. She could feel his alertness conducting through his palm and into the space between her shoulder blades like a current. They were 15 feet from the rear exit when the front of the gallery came apart. It happened fast and controlled, the particular efficiency of people who had planned the entry in advance. 2 figures at the main door. A shout, the room's social fabric tearing at the edges as people scrambled for the walls. Screams arriving late, after the fact, because the people in this room were the kind of people who processed danger slowly, who needed a moment to believe it was real. Dante's arm came across her, hard, without hesitation, pressing her back against the exposed brick wall and putting his body between her and the room. His back was a wall. His breathing was controlled. She could feel it, steady, measured, nothing like hers, which had gone shallow and fast. She gripped the fabric of his jacket, both hands. It was over in under 2 minutes. His men, 4 of them, dispersed through the room in a pattern she understood in retrospect she had never been meant to notice, handled it with the same controlled efficiency as the threat. Felix handled the rest. By the time the sound of people pushing toward the exits crested and broke, the disruption had been removed in a way that would never fully appear in any police report. The room emptied. The light stayed on. Zara's back was still against the brick wall. Dante turned around. He looked at her face, and something in his own shifted in a way she had not seen before, not the relief of a man who has managed a problem, but the specific, unguarded expression of someone who has just become aware of a vulnerability they had not accounted for and do not know what to do with. "Are you hurt?" His voice was different, the measured quality gone, something beneath it that he hadn't covered in time. No, her hands were still trembling. She looked at them. "I'm not hurt." He looked at her hands. He didn't touch them. He looked at them for a long moment with the focused, careful attention of a man who wants very much to do something and is choosing deliberately not to. The safe house was in Hell's Kitchen. A clean, quiet apartment on a side street in the West 40s, the kind of place that could belong to anyone and obviously belong to no one, furnished in the anonymous style of somewhere designed to be briefly inhabited and not remembered. Felix was in the back bedroom on a call. One of Dante's men was outside the front door. The city beyond the windows made its permanent sound muffled and constant, like a river. Dante sat across from her at a small kitchen table, 2 glasses of water between them. His jacket was off. His sleeves were rolled to the forearm. For the first time since she had met him, he looked, not diminished, nothing about him would ever look diminished, but human. There was a tiredness around his eyes that had nothing to do with tonight. Zara wrapped both hands around her glass and looked at the table. "I want to ask you something," she said. He waited. "The first night, the text." She looked up at him. "You could have ignored it. You could have sent back wrong number and closed it out, and I would have spent 1 embarrassing minute thinking about it and moved on with my life." She held his gaze. "Why did you answer?" He was quiet for a long time, not avoiding it. She knew his silences well enough now to read them. This was the silence of a man finding the honest answer instead of the convenient one. "Because you were angry," he said. "Not performing anger, just angry. Hurt and furious, and completely without pretense. Just exactly what you were, no management, no strategy." He turned the glass slowly between his palms. "Everyone around me is performing something. Fear, mostly. Occasionally want. Nobody is just what they are. A pause. You were just what you were. In a misdirected text at night, on a Brooklyn sidewalk, you were more real than anyone I'd been in the same room with in years. She looked at him for a long moment. That's the saddest reason to reply to a wrong number I've ever heard, she said softly. Something happened in his face. The same thing she had glimpsed on the rooftop terrace, the brief, careful unclenching of something that had been held shut for a very long time. She looked at the table, at the 2 glasses of water, at the distance between them, which was the width of a kitchen table, and also, she understood, considerably less than that. The deal is done, she said. 2 events. I assume Felix handles the paperwork in the morning. By 9, he confirmed. She nodded. She should feel relieved. She had been telling herself that she would feel relieved when this moment arrived, clear, free, out of all of it, back to her spreadsheets and her venue proposals and her quiet Crown Heights apartment with its chain lock and its succulent on the welcome mat. She picked up her phone, looked at it for a moment, typed slowly and honestly, and hit send before the second-guessing could arrive. The deal is done. So, why do I not want to leave? She watched the screen. Across the table, she heard his phone buzz against the wood. He looked down at it, read it, looked up at her. His reply came through 1 second later. Because you were never really leaving. She set the phone face down on the table. Outside, the city carried on. Hell's Kitchen in the small hours, the last of the traffic, the distant ambient pulse of Manhattan that never fully stopped. Inside the quiet kitchen, 2 glasses of water sat untouched on a table between 2 people who had every reason to stand up and leave, and had not moved. She knew how this looked. She knew what Felix would say. She knew that she was tangled in the edges of a world that did not give clean exits to people who learned its geography, and that the paperwork in the morning would close one door while something else entirely had already been opened, and she was not sure it could be closed again. The first wrong decision had been the text that wasn't meant for him, the text that started all of it on a Brooklyn sidewalk under a busted streetlight, with shaking hands and 2 years of grief, and 1 wrong digit in the middle of a number she thought she knew by heart. She looked across the table at Dante Romano and thought, I would send it again. Don't stop here. The story is just heating up. Subscribe to Nico I's Stories for the continuation, bonus chapters, and brand new stories. Your next obsession is already waiting.